Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. I'm excited to be here with you guys today and talk about all things communication. To be honest with you, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And mostly because when we make changes in the way that we communicate inside of our businesses, really, it's just communication in general, whether that's to a team, to a partner, to just the way that we communicate. When we change the way that we communicate, literally everything changes. And it's so interesting because I think that for me and most of my clients, we started as solopreneurs or small teams. And then all of a sudden, years down the road, you have this team in place and you're leading, you have children. So you're like in this leadership position and you're like, but what am I doing? Right? Like we all bring our baggage and our bullshit and the way that we have not been communicators into our business, as we do with many things. And so it is just communicating, and communicating well can truly change how your business feels, how all of your relationships feel. And so I'm excited to teach you how to be a better communicator and how it's going to help your leadership, help your team, and help you to just feel better. Because a lot of the things that we don't think about with communication is we always think about communication as the person on the receiving end, and we don't think about the weight that we carry when we are not communicating well. So let's get into it. I was talking to a client this week and we were discussing just points of stress for her and going through what sort of things in her business energize her and what sort of things in her business deplete her. And in that conversation, she was talking about how she is always late because she will have back-to-back appointments. And then she goes into the appointments kind of flustered. And then during the appointments, her schedule can get all messed up because she doesn't want to cut people off when they are expressing emotions, or sometimes she will have women that are crying. And she's just a really kind and genuine and empathetic person, as I think most of us women in business are. Like, we're service providers and we got into our business to help people in some way, shape, or form. And we were all taught, manners and don't interrupt people and, be quiet, be small, be a good girl. All these things are being carried with us. And so she was talking about how much stress it creates for her. And so that is just one example of, like, there's a big fear that we have around communicating because we believe that when we communicate about our wants and or needs, that we are not being nice, right? And we're supposed to be nice. And yes, we're supposed to be kind and we're supposed to give good quality service. But one of the things that I shared with her, and I often say, is boundaries create respect. And when we are giving somebody a service, I know for myself and for my clients, it's easy for us to over give because we love our work, we love our people. And so at a certain point, we forget that when we are giving past a certain point, that it's taking away from us. And we forget the effect of that can sometimes be frustration and resentment, right? So another example of this is I have a client, and many of my clients have done this. You've probably done it. I know I've done it at certain points. They will have teams in place and then they find themselves frustrated with a certain team member or multiple team members in the way that things are being done. They're not up to their standard or their quality. And so they're just redoing things, or taking those tasks over. And this is a slippery slope because it's very hard for you to build trust with your team when you aren't empowering them with fully trusting that they can do things and coaching them and guiding them and teaching them. And so it's hard when things are not being done correctly. And, she was very frustrated because there was something that was continuing to not be done correctly. And so she just started doing it herself. And so, in both of these instances, we have these women who have very successful businesses, who have support teams in place, but most importantly, they have a voice. They have the ability to clearly say what is working, what is not working, what expectations are, what boundaries are, but feel held back because either it feels easier in the moment to just overlook it and not have the conversation, or because you don't want to be mean, right? You don't want to say anything to hurt anybody's feelings. You don't want anybody to be mad at you, right? I don't think there's any of us, women or men, that wants somebody to just like us. I would love for everybody to like me. I know that there's a lot of people that don't. I have to get over that, right? There's just some people that are not my jam and I'm not theirs. And, we have to move past that. But in business, because there is scarcity that can drive us, we're so accustomed to meeting everybody else's needs that when it comes to communicating, we can forget about our own needs. So those are just a couple of examples that have happened with clients that have probably showed up for you, right? Like you're on a call, you see that call is running over, or you're with a client, or in this, with a patient, and you see okay, I am at time. I need to be moving on to the next thing. This person's in the middle of talking. What do I do? Or, this continues to happen and I could just do it better myself. So I'll just take this. It's only going to take me 5 minutes. Right. And so that we're avoiding conversations out of what feels like self-preservation. But that self-preservation is causing on the back end a lot of frustration and resentment. And so this is why we have to learn how to communicate better. This is why we have to learn how to have conversations that are uncomfortable. And what I've found in working with women across all industries, women with teams of all sizes, is that clear communication is the solve for almost every issue. And I know that's a big thing to say because we're talking in the problems and issues that I deal with clients, we're talking about all the nitty-gritty things from disorganization, dysfunction, we have team stuff, we have client stuff. It's across the board. And we're looking at every intricate part of the business itself. But I really believe that statement. I really believe that the majority of problems are coming from a lack of clear communication. And the reason why I believe that and know that is because if we think about any problem that we are experiencing, be that in our personal or professional lives, there is probably some point, if you were to really pick it apart, to where you could identify some sort of lack of understanding or some sort of lack of clarity, some sort of disorganization that happened. We could trace it back and break it apart to where there was some breakdown of communication or no communication at all, right? When our teams are not meeting our expectations, are we being clear about the expectations would be the answer. Truthfully, it is easier in any sort of problem to blame someone else. It is much harder to take responsibility and ownership, but ownership is leadership. Ownership and responsibility and saying, I didn't give you clear direction on that. And here is clear direction. Please try again. That's on me. That's a different conversation than that deliverable looks like shit. I'm just going to do it myself. Which empowers your team more, right? So clear communication is the solve for most issues. And so anytime that if you're, whatever problem that you're experiencing in your business right now, I want you to think about where you could be more clear, where there might be a misunderstanding, where there might be a lack of clarity, because I guarantee you one or all of those things are involved. So There's a lot of CEOs that are, taking on physical work and taking on time and doing these things. And then they're also carrying that emotional load that I was talking about with the resentment and the frustration of like, why can't they get this right? Or why aren't they doing this differently? Or why are they? We're always looking at things outside of us to fix problems. And while there usually is something outside of us, there's also something within us. There's two sides, right? There is a reason we had some sort of role in that problem. Figuring out what your role is in that problem will change the way that you assess and respond to problems. And if you change the way at which you assess and respond to problems, you build trust and better relationships and become a better communicator because you're taking ownership and accountability. So, in your business right now, I want you to think about where you are not effectively, clearly communicating. I say this all the time, but clarity is queen. There is nothing more important when we are delegating, running teams, leading anything, leading inside our household. When we're talking to our children, if I tell my son to go upstairs and do his laundry, at this point, he knows what that means. But when he first started doing it, I had to say, you put your pants here, you put your shirts on the hangers this way. Like, we have to take responsibility in how we are delegating and communicating. When you delegate, you need to be giving the who, what, where, when, why. It's so easy to fire something off to your team in Slack and say, hey, do this thing. A lot of us in business, because there is, things are fast moving and we get ideas randomly, but that's great. But you also could be really overwhelming your team by operating that way. I have been that person and I saw the overwhelm and the ripple effect of what that caused. And so I make a conscious effort to not do that, to take the time to plan for clarity across the board before I'm delegating things out. And do I miss the mark sometimes? Absolutely. I'm still human. But what I know is that my team is always happier when they have full clarity. And if they need to ask questions, I'm happy to provide further clarity. But it makes things so much easier than just being reactive and then having the expectation or assuming that people can get it right when they don't have all the information. The people that work for and with and alongside us cannot read our minds. We do this a lot with our partners too, like expecting that our partners should know that we want something done a certain way. What about if we just took accountability and ownership for not telling them? And what if instead we made the decision of, if I want something done differently or in a certain way, I'm going to make sure that I clearly explain it. And let me also say that there are times in which you will clearly explain something to a team member or to someone, and they still won't get it right. And instead of being flustered and frustrated and resentful, you ask questions instead. Instead of taking it upon yourself to take on the task so you can get it done right, look at what you communicated. Was it actually clear? Was it clear to you or was it clear to them? Did they express that they understood? If they're not asking questions, that's on them and you can encourage them to do that. But I just really am never going to, I'm going to die on the hill that like ownership and accountability for us comes first, because then we can control that. We can make a difference. So when you're delegating, you need to tell people, if you're delegating out a task, you need to tell them when you need that done by. You should absolutely be utilizing a project management software. And if you're not, I don't even know how you're running a business at this point, but you need to give the when, you need to give the where, You need to give the what. You need to give the why. It is important for people to have a full understanding of decisions that are made. And this doesn't have to come from a place of like being an over explainer, but we need to formulate the habit of asking for help in a way that is helpful for the people we're asking it from. There is a clear trickle effect of the example you are down to your team. And if you are being urgent and reactive and spouting things off and just expecting them to catch all these balls and just figure it out, I think that you're setting them up to fail and you're setting yourself up to be frustrated. So you can't expect or assume that people just know. You need to give details of what you need and when you need it. When we communicate clearly about what we need, when we give the details that are necessary to fulfill that need, we are more likely to get that need met. So clarity is queen. It is your goal to make sure that you are providing complete clarity. And when you don't, take responsibility for that. You need to have a clear plan before you go spouting things off. Do not run your meetings without an agenda. Do not just put a meeting in place for a conversation. Have a plan. Have a clear sequence of events that will provide clarity. Set meeting agendas that make sense, that give people the details that they need. I want you to think about scenarios when you've been frustrated or resentful in your business. And then I want you to answer the question of, what could I have done better? Don't make it about them. Think about any of those scenarios. What could I have done better? In conversations with my clients, we can quickly trace it back to a period of time in which they could have said something or done something differently. So like the example with one of my clients and being frustrated about being late for appointments, I said to her, you have to speak up. People that are in appointments with you are likely there and present with you. They're not paying attention to the time. They don't know what the time is. And so you can casually and kindly, at that 5 minutes before it's up mark, mention to them, in this last 5 minutes, is there anything else you want to discuss? There is ways to do it that are professional and courteous while also being boundaries. And that's what we really have to figure out as business owners, is that line. We toe it so lightly that we just would rather not say anything. And then, of course, the resentment and the frustration comes. So I want you to think about a time where you were resentful or frustrated about something in your business and see if you can trace that back to something that you did or didn't do. And then moving forward, I want you to think about the clarity that you're going to bring to every interaction that you have, whether that's delegating something, asking for something, presenting, something that you need, whether that's in a conversation with your children, your partner, your team. I want you to think about how you can be more clear, how you can give more detail, how you can make sure that they have everything that they need to meet the expectation that you have. And can you clearly also share that expectation? I don't want you to expect people to read your mind. I don't want you to be so busy in your day to day that you feel like you don't have time to give those details, because spending that extra few minutes up front to give a clear plan of action to people is worth it, because you're going to be either redoing things, answering questions down the line, or being frustrated because you're not going to get the results that you wanted or your expectations met. So it's better to take those few minutes up front, and it will help you long term. So I want you to put in place, when you're going to communicate, taking a second to think about how you can express yourself clearly. And then I also want you to challenge yourself to take responsibility and ownership for any sort of dysfunction or disorganization that is currently in your business or in your home? What is your role in that dysfunction? If you can identify that role, then you can change that role. That's the beauty of ownership. So, if you want less stress, if you want less overwhelm, you need to be a better communicator. You have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations. You have to be willing to take responsibility for when you aren't giving clear direction. And when you do these things, when you can go to your team or any conversation that you have with full clarity, it is such a relief for you and for them, and can strengthen your relationships and really build that trust that you need with your team, to be able to delegate more. So, thank you guys for coming and listening today. I hope you are having a fantastic day. Next episode, we are talking about our inability to be still, how when we try to create space, how we resort to our default setting of working because that's what we know, and the importance of stillness, the importance of rest, the things that we know, but actually how to implement them. So join me for the next episode. I love to hear from you guys about these episodes, what was helpful for you, what your takeaways were. Please tag me on Instagram at the Mom Founders Table when you are listening. Please send me DMs and tell me what you want to hear on this podcast, what would be most helpful for you, things that you've applied from the podcast and how it went. I just love to connect with you guys and really make this a community of mom founders because that's important to me. And then if you are an established mom founder and you are recognizing that it's time for a change in the way that you run your business and you really need to restructure your business for more freedom, be that time freedom and flexibility because you're running yourself into the ground and you're overworking, I built the Female Founders Freedom Framework, and it is a free guide that will change your life, where I am assessing 8 areas of your business, giving you non-negotiables that you need in your business to be able to have freedom, have flexibility, and continue to succeed, as well as some reflective questions, action steps for you to change. It's really, really good, y'all. So head over to kelseykenrai.com/female founders freedom framework. That's a lot of F's, and grab that for free today. And I will see you guys on the next episode.